It's the Morning Sports Report here at TribLIVE.com. Ken Laird, you know Kevin Gorman, Trib columnist extraordinaire. Kevin, we got the Hall of Fame weekend here. Exhibition football is upon us. And a Steelers Hall of Famer, Jerome Bettis, will be the last to be inducted on Saturday before the Sunday night game with the Steelers and the Vikings. Who will be the next Steeler to go in after Jerome? And may it be a while.
Well, I don't think it's going to be more than 5 years. I think Troy Polamalu, I don't know if he's the next one to go in, Ken, but I think he's the next shoe-in. I think he's the next guy, and I'm not sure. I say more than 5 years. I think he's a first-ballot guy. It could be debatable at that point. You have to take in consideration that he may not have the statistics to support it, but that he was an innovator in the game, that he's a guy who redefined his position and, is one of the all-time greats at his position. I think that's the key is that, that he was a strong safety, not a free safety, and that in that regard, he was a guy who had, his statistics that you're going to look at might be more in the type of tackles that he made. And I think what people are going to remember about Troy Polamalu is the spectacular plays that he made, more so than looking at comparing statistics between himself and a contemporary like Ed Reed, who had twice as many interceptions as Polamalu did.
At really a different position, as you point out.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key.
Strong.
Is you can say safety and try to put them all in the same box, but we're talking about a round hole and a square hole, one square hole, one round hole. They're not; these aren't the same type of fits. And I think when you look at what the Steelers accomplished during his era, going to the Super Bowl 3 times, winning twice, and you think about that defense, I think Troy Polamalu is the guy that was the star of the best defense in the NFL at the time. And I think that's where he really stands out. In the same regard as how
was Bettis the signature piece of the 05 offense?
Well, not the 05 offense. I think he was the signature piece of the offense while the Steelers were going on a great run of being in the AFC Championship game. Obviously, in 2005, Bettis was his swan song.
Right.
He's a guy who took a pay cut to stay on the team, took a minimized role where he was basically the short yardage and goal line back, and that was his role on the team. But I think Polamalu was the defensive catalyst. On a great defense, he was the star, and I think that's why he'll be a guy who gets in the first or second ballot. I think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer personally, but I don't have a vote in the matter.
I think it's going to be tougher than you portray it to be, not only for the Ed Reed factor because of those numbers. There just aren't many true safeties that go in. Now, Rod Woodson did, but he played corner as well.
Yeah.
Ronnie Lott was a little more flexible.
Ronnie Lott's the guy that, comes across as that's the safety you want to model all safeties after is Ronnie Lott.
There's only one true safety, I guess, in the last 26 years, though, that's got into the Hall of Fame. So and look at other positions too. Hines Ward's going to have a real fight at receiver. There's a logjam there.
Yeah, and Hines Ward, he has 1,000 receptions, but by the time his 5 years come up and he's eligible, 1,000 receptions isn't going to be that big of a deal. The game is much more passing oriented than it was when he came into the league. I think, like I said about Polamalu,
that redefining thing will work for both.
That's what I was going to say. Polamalu redefined his position.
So did Hines.
And the guy that I wanted to use as an example of that, because I was there when he didn't get in at the Super Bowl in Dallas, and I talked with him about that and talked with others about him, was Dermontti Dawson, a guy who redefined the center position because not only was he snapping the ball, he was pulling like a guard. So he was a guy who was able to do the center's job and, to some extent, a guard's job because of his athleticism. Polamalu is a guy, and I'll remind you this, at the end of his career, at the very tail end of his career, second to last season, he's a guy who, despite being about 5'10", 5'11" tops, I want to say he's an inch shorter than me, 200 pounds, he was playing inside linebacker for the Steelers. He wasn't just a guy who stepped up into the box. They actually went without an inside linebacker and moved Polamalu in and put an extra defensive back because he could cover, he could tackle. He was a guy who blew up plays. They used him in blitz packages. He would torpedo guys like Chris Johnson when he was a 2,000-yard rusher and submarine him and take his feet out. The spectacular interceptions that he made, whether it was leaping for a ball or diving for one, the interception that he made against the Baltimore Ravens is one of the iconic plays in Steelers history. It's not the immaculate reception, but if there's an immaculate interception, that's it for the Steelers. I mean, him, playing like a Tasmanian devil and flying through the defense and his hair flying and, just so many plays about Troy Polamalu stick out to me. The guy that would be kind of the cautionary tale, as you mentioned, Ken, and I think, I've heard the phrase Steelers fatigue from Hall of Fame voters, but Donnie Shell was as good of a safety as there was in his generation, and yet he kind of preceded Ronnie Lott. He hasn't been able to get in. L.C. Greenwood hasn't been able to get in. So, the Veterans Committee could put maybe an L.C. Greenwood in posthumously. But I think Polamalu is going to get in before either Alan Faneca or Hines Ward.
TribLive.com. We'll be talking about the Hall of Fame game next week. Let's enjoy Jerome this weekend here at Trib Live.